"You don't deserve this lifestyle," he said, standing in the middle of the kitchen I designed, with a glass of bourbon I paid for in his hand, wearing the loafers I ordered on his behalf last Christmas. I didn't say a word, just smiled. A slow, practiced smile. The kind I'd learned over years of being underestimated, overcooked, and overlooked. Because the truth is, every cabinet in that kitchen, every marble tile under his feet, every leather chair in that house was paid for with money I earned, saved, protected, and multiplied. My name is Clarice Rochelle Freeman. I'm 46 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge. It wasn't always like this. We started small, like most couples who believe love can stretch $1. One-bedroom apartment off Cleveland Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. Chipped linoleum that caught on my socks. A leaky faucet that sang through the night. A front door that groaned like an old man with arthritis every time the wind pressed against it. But it was ours. Back then, we split bills down to the penny. Him counting singles, me jotting numbers in a notebook stained with coffee rings. He was sweet then. Didn't mind the hand-me-down furniture from my aunt's basement or the fact that I bought groceries with coupons clipped from the Sunday paper. I'd stretch a $25 food budget like it was scripture. Rice, beans, chicken thighs on sale. We were building something, or at least I thought we were. I met Terrence at a Black Business Expo downtown. I'd tagged along to help my cousin run her hair care booth. Homemade shea butter, edge control, satin bonnet stitched in her basement, while gospel played low on the radio. The convention center smelled like ambition and body oil, shea, mango, coconut, and the sound of dreams rubbing elbows. He walked up wearing a thrifted gray suit and a tie that refused to stay straight. But his smile, that smile, it had a spark. The kind men carry when they don't have much yet but believe they will. He was pitching some app idea, delivery tracking with a community touch. His pitch was rough, his slides crooked, but his eyes burned with something raw. Most folks brushed him off. I didn't. Not because I believed in the app, but because I saw how hard he was trying. When he asked me to dinner the next night, I said yes. We ended up at Waffle House, booth by the window. He ordered a Texas patty melt combo, no onions, and I got grits with cheese and a side of laughter. The check came, and I paid. He didn't pretend to reach, didn't make a show of it, just said, "Next time, when the app hits." I respected that honesty more than any smooth lie. We talked for 2 hours, about trap music and Toni Morrison, about how both could tell the truth in rhythm. He said he wanted to build something that lasted. I told him I wanted peace and freedom. We shook on it, like business partners. A little joke that didn't feel like a joke. 3 months later, he needed help with a loan. Not in my name, but I co-signed. He used it to start a small logistics company. 2 trucks, 1 rented office, and a website stitched together from YouTube tutorials. I was working nights at Mount Carmel Hospital as a medical biller, eyes sore, back aching, but I still helped him file invoices in the mornings before I collapsed into bed. I built his spreadsheets, tracked his mileage, even registered his LLC on the state site when he couldn't figure out the form. When the first check came in, young $200 for a delivery run to Cincinnati, he ran home waving it like a flag. "Baby, we did it," he said. I cooked spaghetti that night and poured store-brand wine into real glasses. We split the profit 60-40 in his favor. "You did all the work," I told him. "Just keep building." And build he did. 5 years later, 2 trucks turned into 12. His name started to carry weight, Terrence Freeman Logistics LLC on every side door, bold white lettering on blue paint. He hired dispatchers, leased an office on Morse Road, even landed contracts with regional retailers. I watched it grow like a tree I'd planted from seed. He got more confident. Sharper suits, tighter fades, louder cologne. The man who once counted pennies now wore a Tag Heuer watch that ticked like it knew my overtime hours had paid for it. Somewhere between his second Sprinter van and his first intern, the we started turning into me. It began with small things. At networking mixers, he introduced me as his wife, never mentioning that I was also the one balancing the ledgers, negotiating insurance, writing his proposals. He'd brush off my ideas. Yeah, I got it. If I reminded him to check the expense reports, he'd sigh, Clarice, you always so careful. Careful, like that was a flaw. Then the purchases started. A $6,000 espresso machine for the office. A well $200 dinner at Mitchell's Steakhouse for clients. He stopped asking, stopped explaining. I kept quiet, kept receipts. Then came the BBQ, Labor Day weekend. He invited everyone, drivers, dispatchers, clients, even a few Columbus influencers he was courting for some social campaign. I cooked for 2 straight days. My kitchen smelled like smoked paprika and sweat, ribs, mac and cheese, baked beans, deviled eggs, cornbread, and peach cobbler that took me 2 hours just to peel peaches for. By the time the party started, my feet were swollen inside my sandals. Music filled the backyard. Old school R&B and trap fighting for control, children running between the lawn chairs, red cups everywhere. His dispatcher, a tall man with a beer belly and a loud laugh, raised a cup and shouted, "To the King of Columbus Trucking!" Everyone cheered. Terrence lifted his glass, smiling wide, the hero of his own movie. And me? I stood behind the grill, tongs in hand, sweat sliding down my spine like a warning. He never said my name. Not once. Not our company. Not we built this. Just him. That night, when the music died and the smoke cleared, I asked him softly, "Why didn't you correct him?" He didn't even look up from his phone. Because I'm the face, Clarice. That's what people respect. Something broke inside me then, quietly, like glass under a rug. From that day, the laughter between us turned shallow. His jokes didn't land. His hugs felt like habit. But what hurt most wasn't the pride. It was the erasure. That week, while he slept, I started pulling records, tax returns, licenses, deeds, contracts. I'd always kept digital copies. Habit of a biller. Organized folders, labeled by year. When I looked closer, my chest tightened. He'd filed amendments without telling me, listing himself as sole owner, created a second LLC with almost the same name, leaving me off entirely, opened a business credit card I'd never seen, routing payments through that new company. He was funneling money out, quietly, like a thief tiptoeing through our future. When I confronted him, he didn't flinch, didn't deny it. "Clarice," he said, setting down his phone like I was a child interrupting a game. "It's still ours. Don't be so emotional." That word, emotional. The way men use it when they want to turn your logic into hysteria. I stared at him. My heart wasn't racing. It was slowing down, because that's when I realized I wasn't angry. I was done. I didn't argue. I started planning. At church that Sunday after service, I found Ms. Deborah, a retired clerk from the Franklin County Recorder's Office, always wore big hats and perfume that lingered 3 pews behind her. She listened, nodded once, and said, "Baby, call Stuart Lowell, bow-tie lawyer downtown, knows paperwork better than God." Stuart was everything she said, quiet, meticulous, glasses perched low. His office smelled like ink and lemon oil. He reviewed the documents, whistled low, and said, "Mrs. Freeman, technically you still hold controlling interest." His filings were sloppy. That one word felt like sunlight. Sloppy. It meant I still had power. So I got to work. I updated operating agreements, drew up a living trust, shifted property ownership using a quiet transfer clause, legal, traceable, notarized. I opened a new business account under that trust and redirected automated deposits. Not a cent stolen, just rerouted. Terrence never noticed. Too busy rehearsing for the life he thought he'd built alone. Every evening he came home, tossed his keys on the granite counter I'd chosen, kissed the air near my cheek, and said, "Babe, big things coming." I'd smile, stir the collard greens, "That's nice, baby." He'd pour bourbon, brag about new clients, new contracts, new dreams. And I'd listen, quietly, because he didn't realize. The ground under his shiny loafers was already shifting. Every word he spoke echoed off walls I now owned. Every plan he made was being built on a foundation I had already moved. And I didn't need to raise my voice to make it happen, because silence, the kind born from clarity, isn't weakness, it's strategy. The Thursday after Labor Day, Terrence came home with a new Rolex on his wrist. "Client gift," he said, grinning like a boy who just snuck candy before dinner. "But I might keep it." He twisted his arm in the kitchen light so the gold caught the sun through the blinds. His skin glowed bronze under the reflection, like he was already the man he pretended to be. He didn't notice that I'd already taken his name off the utility accounts that morning. He didn't notice that the auto-pay transfers no longer came from our joint checking, or that the passwords to our shared accounting software had been changed. Subtle, seamless. A new pattern only I knew. He didn't notice the business tax folders were gone either. I'd moved them to a private Google Drive, locked behind two-factor authentication that pinged only my phone. He didn't notice anything, because Terrence never looked down. He only looked forward. And me? I had learned to live in the details he ignored. He didn't ask why the savings account balance looked thinner, didn't ask how the mortgage got paid every month. Terrence didn't like details, he liked results. And for years, I had been his results. But that Thursday evening, something in me changed. I started liking details a whole lot. Every morning before sunrise, I got up an hour earlier. The house would still be quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, and the soft drip of the coffee maker brewing the strength I needed to survive him. I'd sit at the dining table, still in my robe, print out statements, highlight transactions, call county offices, and keep my notes in a blue binder labeled Freeman Structures, Private. That binder became my second Bible. I studied it like scripture. I learned terms that used to sound like another language: quitclaim deed, silent partner clause, fiduciary breach, trust asset reallocation. By 7:30 every morning, I knew which forms needed notarization, which ones required in-person filing, and which could be mailed certified through USPS, green card and all. Sometimes, on my lunch breaks, I'd drive to the Franklin County Courthouse, that old brick building with the cracked steps and the smell of ink and floor wax. I'd go straight to the window on the left, where Ms. Green sat, short box braids, Ohio State lanyard, and nails painted a fierce candy red. She'd slide open the glass and smile. "Back again, Miss Clarice?" And I'd smile back, just trying to stay ready. She never asked what for, but I think she knew, because women like us, we don't wait for storms. We build shelters. I started keeping a logbook. Dates, times, signatures, notations. If Terrence ever came for me, I'd have a wall of paper to meet him. Because anger burns out fast. Preparation lasts forever. That Sunday, we had dinner with his sister, Tamika, the Refectory, that fancy French restaurant near campus with white linen and piano music that sounds like wealth whispering in your ear. The kind of place where every fork has a job and every laugh has a price. Tamika walked in, wearing confidence like perfume, tight curls, a designer purse slung over her arm, and that little smirk she'd perfected through 3 divorces and 1 rich boyfriend. The moment she sat down, she leaned forward like a talk show guest who'd been waiting to drop her line. "You really turned it around, baby bro," she said, cutting into her shrimp risotto. "I remember when you couldn't even afford to fix your brakes." Terrence laughed, smug and shiny under the dim lights. "Yeah, well, I built something that works." Tamika turned to me. Her lip gloss caught the candlelight. "Clarice, you lucky." I blinked. "Lucky?" She raised her wine glass and let it clink softly against her ring. "Some of us still waiting on a man who can provide." The air went heavy. I looked at Terrence. He didn't flinch, didn't defend me, just adjusted his cuff and smiled like she'd complimented his tie. I wanted to scream. I wanted to reach across that white tablecloth and remind her who helped build what she was bragging about, but instead I smiled. A small, steady smile. The kind women use when they choose grace over gasoline. Then I asked the waiter for a to-go box, the kind made of foil, the kind that folds up tight and holds dignity better than dessert. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't even talk. I logged into our business banking account and opened a new checking account under my living trust, named it CRF Holdings. I transferred $80,000, funds from the business line, all documented, traceable, ethical, every memo labeled with exact invoice numbers, every transfer stored in duplicate, one in a cloud folder, one in a flash drive hidden inside the hollow of my grandmother's old Bible. Because if anyone ever questioned me, my paper trail would be stronger than any testimony. 2 weeks later, I caught him in a lie. He came home late, suitcase open on the bed, the smell of expensive cologne filling the room. "I'm flying to Atlanta," he said, tossing shirts into the Louis Vuitton duffel I'd bought for our anniversary. "Conference for logistics and supply chain management, wholesaler thing, networking." I nodded slow. "What's the name of the conference?" He froze just a second too long. Southern Freight Alliance or something." I already knew it didn't exist. I'd checked, twice. He packed anyway. Slid my platinum Amex into his wallet like it was his birthright. Didn't even look at me, just waved at the door on his way out. "Don't wait up," he said, like I was his receptionist. He was gone for 3 days. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't track his flight. Instead, I changed the locks. Legally, the house was mine, held by my trust. So he could leave. He just couldn't walk back in. When he came home, he knocked like a stranger. The sound echoed down the hallway. Sharp, hollow, unfamiliar. I opened the door just enough to hand him a yellow envelope. Inside, a letter from my lawyer, Mr. Lowell. Notification of intent to restructure the business, a list of his unauthorized expenses, and one sentence written in my calmest voice. "Boundaries are not punishment, they're protection." He opened it, skimmed it, and laughed. "You being dramatic, Clarice." I tilted my head. "No, I'm being clear." His smile faltered. For the first time, I saw the edges of fear hiding behind that confidence. He walked away, muttering something under his breath about ungrateful women. That night, he slept at his office. Around midnight, my phone lit up. Text message. Terrence. "You really want to do this?" I didn't respond, because by then, it wasn't a question anymore. It was a declaration. That same night, I finalized the last document in my folder, the clause that would remove him from majority control of the business. Stuart helped me draft it. His handwriting was perfect, his tone clinical. "Mrs. Freeman," he said, sliding the paper across his desk, "if he's been mismanaging assets, this is entirely appropriate. You're not destroying him. You're protecting yourself." I nodded. The pen in my hand felt heavier than any weapon. I signed my name. Clarice R. Freeman, clean, firm, permanent. The next morning, I woke before dawn, poured black coffee into my silver thermos, wore flats and a navy blazer, the kind of outfit that says, "I mean business, but I'm not trying to impress you." The courthouse was quiet when I arrived, fluorescent lights buzzing, the faint scent of toner and rain from the night before. I filed the amendments myself, watched the clerk stamp each page, filed, September 26, 2024. Each stamp hit the paper like a heartbeat, final, irrevocable. He still didn't know. He was in Atlanta, or wherever he said he was, posting pictures. One showed up on my feed the next day, him at a rooftop lounge, arm wrapped around a woman in red heels, champagne glass raised high. Caption, "New energy, real empire moves." I stared at it for a long time, then took a screenshot. Not out of jealousy, not out of pain, out of foresight. Because one day I knew evidence would matter more than emotion. I emailed it to myself, saved it twice, printed it once, then I went back to work. When he came home that Monday night, he walked in like nothing happened, keys jangling, whistling, the smell of his cologne arriving before he did. I was sitting at the dining table, pen in hand, reviewing the business profit and loss statements. He paused. "You good?" I looked up, calm as the paper in front of me. "I will be." He poured himself a drink, opened his laptop, started mumbling about supply chain issues, driver shortages, how everybody's lazy these days. I kept reading, quietly, deliberately. He thought my silence was surrender, but I knew better, because silence, the kind born from strategy, isn't weakness. It's preparation. And that night, sitting in that dim kitchen under the soft hum of the refrigerator, I realized something simple but sacred. When a man mistakes your silence for submission, he's already lost his power. The next time he embarrassed me, it was in public. The kind of public that stings more than any private insult, the kind that comes with applause, music, and polite laughter, the kind that dresses humiliation in sequins and candlelight. We were at his company's fall appreciation dinner, held in the ballroom of a hotel downtown. The place looked like money had been ironed and draped over every surface. Real velvet napkins, gold-rimmed glassware, a buffet table long enough to feed half of Ohio. The chandeliers glittered like gossip. Smooth R&B floated through the air, the kind that makes people sway in slow motion while pretending to be humble. Terrence wore a charcoal suit with a pocket square that didn't quite match, the same smug grin he used to wear when we were broke, only now it came with the weight of new arrogance, that expensive kind of pride that money gives men who forget who dressed them for success in the first place. I sat at a round table surrounded by his team, dispatchers, assistants, sales coordinators, all of them dressed like they were auditioning for a reality show titled Young, Paid, and Loud. Laughter bounced across the table like dice. Champagne glasses clinked. Someone made a toast. Someone else whispered about bonuses. One of the junior dispatchers, bright-eyed, still learning how the world sharpens you, leaned across the table and asked, "Clarice, how does it feel watching him build all this?" I smiled without blinking. "Feels like watching my hard work sparkle." She laughed politely, not realizing I wasn't joking, because none of them knew. They only saw the polished version of him. The speeches, the handshakes, the clean suits and clean lies. They didn't see the late nights, the paperwork, the sacrifices, the woman behind the curtain pulling every string. Terrence had rewritten the story, edited me out like a bad first draft. When he took the mic to give his speech, I already knew what was coming. He started strong. That voice he used for investors, deep and rehearsed. He called out his accountant, his marketing consultant, even his barber. Everyone got applause. Everyone got credit. Then he said it, that single sentence that sliced quiet through the room. And to my wife, Clarice, thank you for always holding it down at home. That was it. Not for the years of work. Not for the business plans, not for the foundation I laid while he learned how to walk in shoes I bought, just holding it down at home, as if my contribution began and ended with casseroles and clean laundry. The room clapped. I smiled. My face felt still, heavy, like porcelain. He moved on to his closing toast, talking about team unity, trust, growth. I excused myself quietly, walked out before dessert, heels tapping across the marble floor in rhythm with the music I didn't feel anymore. Outside, the night was cold. The parking lot lights cast long shadows, stretching me thin across the asphalt. I sat in the car with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the ballroom doors. Then I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app, and typed a new entry. Title, What They Don't Know. First line, he can have the spotlight. I already own the stage. Then I locked my phone, sat back, and let that truth settle into my bones, because in that moment I realized something powerful. Applause fades, ownership doesn't. The next morning I drove to the bank, the same branch where we opened our first joint account years ago, back when the tellers used to greet us like newlyweds chasing a dream. This time, I walked in alone. I asked to see Miss Yvette, a black woman with short curls, plum lipstick, and a voice so smooth it could calm a courtroom. She looked up from her desk when she saw me. "Well, hey there, Miss Freeman. What brings you in today?" I slid a folder across the desk, thick, organized, color-coded. Inside were copies of my trust documents, corporate filings, EIN confirmations, and a notarized statement of majority ownership. Miss Yvette flipped through each page carefully, her manicured nails clicking softly on the paper. "You want full account control?" she asked. "Yes," I said, steady. "Effective immediately." Her eyes moved from the papers to me. "And you're listed as majority owner on both LLCs?" "I am." She nodded once, didn't blink, didn't question, just typed something into her screen. A few moments later, she printed a form and slid it across the desk. "Sign here. We'll make the change within 48 hours. The sound of that printer was the sweetest music I'd heard all year. I signed my name, slow, precise. The way you sign something that shifts your entire future by inches. By the following Tuesday, I was the sole signatory on every account tied to the business, and I didn't touch a single dime, not yet, because real power isn't loud, it's patient. A week later, he noticed. It happened when a vendor payment bounced. He stormed into the house that evening like a child who'd lost his favorite toy. The front door slammed against the wall. His voice boomed down the hallway. "Did you touch the business account?" I looked up from my laptop, calm, steady. "No," I said. "I moved it." He blinked. "What?" "I moved it. Consolidated the accounts under CRF Holdings." He stared at me, face tightening, jaw flexing. "Why would you do that?" I closed the laptop. "Because it's mine." He laughed, the kind of laugh men use when they think they're still in control. "Clarice, come on now. You helped. You supported. But don't get it twisted." I stood slowly, walked over to the credenza, and pulled out a red folder. Inside was every proof, every receipt, every filing, all neatly stamped with my name at the top. I handed it to him. "Twisted," I said softly. "You mean like how you twisted the truth?" He flipped through the papers in silence. One page, then another, then another. His breath got shallow, the color drained from his face. "You played me." I met his eyes. "No, I protected myself." He slammed the folder shut. "You think this is fair?" "I think it's overdue." He stared at me, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. The woman who used to soften his mistakes was gone. "Clarice," he said, voice cracking, "you really gonna do this to me?" I shook my head slowly. "I didn't do anything to you, Terrence. I just stopped doing everything for you." He didn't respond, just stood there, chest heaving, hands gripping the folder like it was proof of betrayal instead of accountability. Then he left, packed a bag the next morning, told his staff he was taking a mental health break. I didn't correct him. Let him have that narrative. Let him keep his pride, because pride is cheaper than truth, and I was done paying for either. The days that followed felt strangely light. The house was quieter. The air was clearer. I woke up, made coffee, answered emails, checked the business reports, signed contracts, made payroll, all without him, and nothing fell apart. That's when I realized he'd been a storm, not a shelter. When the noise left, the structure finally stood still enough for me to see it clearly. I rebranded the company that same month, dropped his name, replaced the logo, cleaned the website. Our old slogan, "Driven by Legacy," became something new, something true. Freeman Logistics, built by precision, powered by purpose. I hired 2 women from a local HBCU, young, brilliant, eager, taught them what I knew, paid them what they were worth. Together, we turned the company into something I could finally look at without feeling erased. The business didn't shrink, it grew. Because sometimes, when a man stops sucking all the air out of a room, the plants finally breathe. And that night, as I sat at my desk under the warm glow of a single lamp, reviewing profit sheets that bore only my name, I whispered to myself, This is what survival looks like when you stop apologizing for it." The last time he tried to come back into the house, It was the night before Christmas Eve. That night carried a hush, the kind of winter silence that hums beneath the sound of breathing, the kind that makes even streetlights seem holy. He pulled up in that big black Escalade with the chrome wheels, the one he financed through the business under my name. I heard the low purr of the engine before I saw the lights wash across the front porch. The air outside glowed faint blue from the headlights, brushing against the snow that had been falling since afternoon. I stood by the upstairs window, the one that overlooked the front drive, watched him step out slowly. His breath came out in little white clouds, visible proof that he was human again. Not the polished version he performed in boardrooms, but the man beneath the suit. He stood there for a long moment, hands buried in his coat pockets, just staring at the wreath I'd hung that morning. Fresh pine, a few gold ornaments, and one red velvet bow right in the center. My mama always said red meant protection, especially during the holidays. "It keeps evil out the door," she'd say. He must have remembered that. He looked at it like it was blocking him from something sacred. He didn't knock, didn't move, just stood there, maybe hoping the door would open on its own, but it didn't. Eventually, I came downstairs and opened it just wide enough for the cold to slip through. The air that crept in smelled like snow and unfinished conversations. He looked tired, soft. His beard wasn't lined up, his shoes weren't shined, and the watch, that Rolex he used to flash like a badge of success, was gone. "I just wanted to talk," he said. His voice had changed. No bass, just a worn-out hum. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me until I heard the latch click. The porch light flickered once, steady again. I folded my arms against the chill, the wool of my sweater catching tiny snowflakes that melted against my skin. He looked me up and down, like he didn't recognize me anymore. "You look different," he said quietly. "I am." 2 words, no apology, no explanation. We stood there under the December sky, the streetlights humming low, their orange halos spilling across the frosted pavement. Somewhere down the street, a group of kids were lighting dollar store fireworks, those tiny ones that pop like impatient dreams. Crackles echoed through the night like small, distant gunshots. The smell of pine and baked yams drifted out from my open kitchen window. It mixed with the metallic cold and the faint scent of his cologne, the last trace of the man I used to love. He shifted on his feet, looked at the snow gathering on his coat sleeve, and finally said, "I messed up." His voice cracked around the words, fragile like glass trying not to break. "You were the one who believed in me," he said, "built with me. Nobody else did." I didn't answer. I'd learned the power of silence, how it makes people fill the space with truth they don't mean to say. He looked up at me, eyes red from the cold or maybe from regret. "I was caught up," he said. "You know how it is. People start gassing you up, telling you you're the man, and you start believing it." I let out a breath that turned white in the air. "And you forgot who put gas in the car," I said quietly. He nodded, slow, defeated. The wind picked up, rattling the wreath on the door. Somewhere in the distance, a siren moaned, then faded. "I don't want money," he said after a long pause. "I don't want the business. I need to know if we can talk. Really, talk." There was a time I would have said yes, a time I would have opened that door, reheated dinner, tried to reason with the man who once promised to protect me. But that woman, the one who said yes out of habit, out of fear of being alone, she didn't live here anymore. "I think we're past talking, Terrence." The words came out steady, not bitter. They landed like snow on pavement, soft but permanent. He swallowed hard, looked down at his hands. They were shaking slightly. "I didn't expect you to be this cold." I looked him dead in the eye. "No," I said. "You just never expected me to be this clear." That silence afterward was thick. It carried every apology he never gave, every thank you he forgot to say. He nodded once. No more words. Then he turned back toward the Escalade. The sound of his boots on the frost was the only thing breaking the stillness. Crunch, crunch, crunch. He didn't look back. The next morning, I made coffee. Strong. Black. The way I liked it before my life got sweetened with too many compromises. Steam rose from the mug and curled in the sunlight filtering through the blinds. The house felt still. Peaceful in a way that used to feel lonely, but now just felt earned. I sat at the dining table, opened my laptop, and pulled up an email draft I'd been working on for weeks. The subject line stared back at me in bold text. Subject: Company Rebrand Announcement. I read it once, twice, then hit send. The click was quiet, but it echoed like a door closing for good. Within the hour, our vendors, partners, and clients all received notice that Freeman Logistics Group would now operate under a new name, Clarice Rochelle Freight Solutions. Same services, new leadership, woman-owned, black-owned, efficient, precise. I uploaded a new website banner, a photo of a black woman's hands holding a compass against a map of the Midwest. Beneath it, the tagline I'd written one night when sleep wouldn't come. We don't just move goods, we move with intention. The message spread fast, faster than gossip. Old clients replied with congratulations. New ones reached out within hours. Contracts rolled in. Not because I shouted, but because I'd shown them quiet power could run just as strong. No drama, no shade, just direction. That weekend, I hosted a New Year's brunch at the house. For the first time in years, the place felt full. Not just with people, but with laughter that didn't echo. Off tension. The smell of shrimp and grits filled the kitchen. A gospel playlist hummed through the Bluetooth speaker. Cinnamon rolls on the counter, powdered sugar dusting the air like snow. Close friends came. My cousin Tasha brought a bottle of sparkling cider and too much attitude. Ms. Deborah from church brought deviled eggs and wisdom, same as always. Even Stuart, my bow-tie lawyer, showed up with a homemade lemon pound cake that tasted like redemption. We laughed until the walls remembered what joy sounded like, played dominoes until the table thudded under our hands, talked about new beginnings, boundaries, and blessings that don't need validation. At one point, Tasha leaned over, fork in hand, and said, "Girl, I can't believe you still living in this house. After all that?" I smiled. This house was mine before it was his. I just had to remind it who owned it. The women around the table laughed, that deep, knowing laugh that only women who've survived something can share. Later, someone, I think it was Ms. Deborah, asked softly, "You miss him?" The question didn't sting like it once would have. I took a sip of coffee, thought for a moment, then said, "I miss the version of him that knew how to build. Not the one who forgot who mixed the concrete." The table went quiet for a moment. Then everyone nodded. Because every woman sitting there knew that feeling, of building something someone else tried to claim, of giving your hands, your patience, your faith, and watching someone rewrite the credit line. That day, my living room was full of women who'd been the backbone, the silent partner, the steady builder. And together we realized we were never the background. We were the blueprint. Spring came early that year, the kind of early that makes you second-guess the calendar, like the world decided to give you a head start. The snow melted off the porch steps before Valentine's Day, leaving small puddles that reflected a sky so blue it almost looked staged. And the tulips, the ones I planted 3 years ago, back when I still believed in us, peeked through the thaw like they knew it was finally safe to grow again. I stood on that same porch one quiet morning, hot coffee in hand, silk robe tied tight around my waist, and just listened. No shouting from upstairs, no phone ringing with last-minute emergencies, no man stomping through the house looking for his keys like the world owed him smooth mornings. Just peace, the kind that hums low in your chest, the kind that doesn't ask for attention. It had been 3 months since Terrence signed the final papers. No courtroom drama, no lawyers yelling, no drawn-out excuses. He didn't fight, didn't drag it out. I think deep down, he knew he'd already lost long before the ink dried. When Stuart called the next day, his tone was calm, measured. The voice of a man who's seen enough endings to know closure doesn't always come with confetti. He signed everything, Stuart said. You now have complete ownership of the company, the house, and the vehicle titles. Clean. I remember I didn't cry, didn't cheer, didn't even sigh. I just nodded, even though he couldn't see me through the phone, and said, "Good." Then I hung up, walked into the kitchen, and made myself a grilled cheese sandwich. Butter, bread, cheddar, sizzle, flip, quiet. That's how healing starts, I think. Not with a bang, not with a breakdown, but with something small, a sandwich in silence, and the dignity of knowing you made it out whole. I kept building, quietly. No announcements, no hashtags, just focus. I took the savings from restructuring the company and opened a second location, this one in Dayton. Smaller, leaner, but run by women who reminded me of myself at 30. Sharp, tired, hungry for something that didn't require them to shrink to fit inside it. I made sure they got maternity leave, mental health days, flexible hours, and, most importantly, a path to ownership, because I remembered what it felt like to give your best work to a man who called it help. We didn't just move freight anymore. We moved with honor. And the community noticed. The Columbus Dispatch ran a feature on us that spring. Headline read, "Black-owned freight company puts women at the wheel." Literally. They sent a photographer who asked me to stand in front of one of the trucks. I laughed and said, "As long as you get the team, too." He snapped the picture. Me in a blazer, sunlight catching the small gold cross around my neck, flanked by the women who kept the wheels turning. The reporter asked for a quote. I gave her one straight from the soul. "I'm not the face," I said. "I'm the hands, the spine, and the soul, and I don't need a spotlight to shine." That line ran in bold print. It made people stop. But I didn't mention Terrence. Didn't have to. That was his punishment. Watching me rise without ever being named. One evening in May, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Thick envelope. No return address. The paper smelled faintly like cologne and regret. Inside was a folded photo of us. Back when we had nothing. Me in a red hoodie, hair tied up, laughing with my head tilted back. Him in that oversized black coat he wore everywhere, holding 2 styrofoam takeout containers. We looked happy. The kind of happy you can't fake. On the back, he'd written in neat block letters, "You always had the vision. I just got in the way. I hope you're happy. You deserve it." No signature. Just that. I stared at the photo for a long time. The edges had curled slightly like it had been handled too much, not with regret, with understanding. Because sometimes closure doesn't arrive with an apology, just acknowledgement. I'd loved a man who couldn't love me past his own reflection, and still I survived. No, I did more than survive. I thrived. That 4th of July, I threw a backyard cookout. Not the fancy kind with catered trays and matching plates, the real kind. Plastic chairs that creaked when you leaned back, a spades table in the shade, ribs on the grill, smoke curling up to heaven, potato salad made right, no raisins in sight, Frankie Beverly and Mays playing just loud enough to make the neighbors sway from their porches. The sun dipped slow behind the trees. Kids ran around with glow sticks. Mosquitoes danced in the citronella smoke. Laughter filled every corner of the yard. It was simple, imperfect, beautiful. I stood under the string lights holding a paper plate full of food and joy and just breathed. The scent of charcoal mixed with sweet tea and cologne. Someone's baby started laughing near the swing set. My cousin yelled out a domino call. "That's 10, baby!" And the table erupted. For a moment, I closed my eyes, let the sound wash over me. Because this was the life he once said I didn't deserve. And yet here I was. Not because of him, not despite him, but because I finally chose myself. As the night stretched on, someone handed me a sparkler. I watched the flame catch, the light tracing gold lines in the dark, tiny bursts of fire, tiny proof that even small things can burn bright if you hold them steady. I thought about every version of me that had existed before this moment. The woman who worked 2 jobs, the one who believed silence was love, the one who thought survival meant staying. She was gone, and in her place stood a woman who learned that sometimes peace doesn't come after the storm. Sometimes it's what happens when you realize the storm is gone and you're still standing. That's the part they never understand. The ones who think love is about control. When a woman like me stops giving, stops fixing, stops saving, we don't fall apart. We just go quiet. And when we go quiet, we start building, not revenge, but legacy. Because silence, when it's rooted in clarity, is not the end of a story. It's the start of an empire. And I built mine brick by brick, with grace, grit, and a kind of power that doesn't need applause. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.